Hello mathematicians. Today we are going to talk again about solving quadratics, but this time we are going to use finding the square root. To do that, these equations will be easily able to factor. So if I look at what times what gives me 25, I need to think of the square root of 25. One number times itself gives me 25. 5. So when I factor this, 5 and 5, remember we used to make that chart, and they both have to add to a negative 10, so both 5s should be negative. Remember we made a chart and we found what values multiply to 25 and add to negative 10. In order for this to work, these have to be the same. So rather than writing these twice, I'm going to have x minus 5 squared equals 7. Something times itself, I can just put a squared. So break 25 up into 5 and 5, and both of them have to be negative to get a negative 10. Now that I have this, I want to get to this x. So how do I get rid of a square? Square root. And that'll get rid of that, so I'm left with x minus 5 equals root 7. Now, square roots we know can be positive or negative, so it can be a positive or a negative. Taking the square root of something, it can be a positive or a negative. So now when I go ahead and solve, I need to get rid of a minus 5. And how do you get rid of a minus 5? Add 5. So x is going to equal positive root 7 plus 5. Or x can equal negative root 7 plus 5. Square root can be a positive or square root can be negative. At this point, you can enter both of these in on your calculator. Root 7 plus 5 and you get 7.6, or enter in negative root 7 plus 5. Now make sure when you enter in root 7 that you close the parenthesis before you add 5. You close the parenthesis before you add 5. And our answer, 2.4. So all of these today are going to be perfect squares where we can rewrite it where they are both the same. Only need to write it once with a square then. Take the square root of both sides. Make sure we remember square root is positive or negative, which is going to give us two answers. Let's try another one. Again, let's look at two numbers that multiply to 9 and add to 6. And I need them to be the same number. So 3 times 3 gives me 9. Do these two add up to be 6? Yes. I don't want 9 times 1 because I need them to be both the same. This only works out if they're the same. So this would be x plus 3 times x plus 3. I'm factoring this into x plus 3 equals x plus 3 times x plus 3. So this here becomes these two. Since there's two of them, I don't need to write them twice. I can write them once with a squared sign. How do I get rid of a squared sign? Take the square root. What do I do on one side? You must do to the other. The square root sign and the squared cancel, leaving you x plus 3. And what is the square root of 100? It is 10, or it is negative 10. Negative 10 times negative 10 equals positive 100. So I have to have both the positive and the negative. So there's my two equations. This equals the positive. This equals the negative. Now you can go ahead and solve for x. Minus 3. Minus 3. X equals 7. Same thing on this side. Minus 3. Minus 3. X equals negative 13. So factor this so it's the same thing both sides. Take the square root. Set up our two equations because square root is positive and negative. Solve for x. Try this next one on your own. Look for things that multiply to 36, add to negative 12. Factor, and then solve for x. Let's see how you did. What two numbers added to 36, or multiplied to 36, added to negative 12? I'm sure you thought of 6 and 6, but 6 times 6 is positive 12 when you added them. 6 plus 6 is positive 12, so I need negative 6 plus negative 6. So x, and there's my negative 6. X, there's my negative 6. So this here became these two. Do I need to write these twice since they're the exact same thing? No. Multiplying something by itself is just squaring it. So I can rewrite it once with a squared sign, and that means the same thing. I need to get to x, so what do I have to get rid of? The squared sign. How do you get rid of a squared sign? Take the square root. That leaves us what's inside. X minus 6 equals positive root 6. Or that can also be x minus 6 equals negative root 6. Because square root can be positive or it can be negative. Go ahead and solve. Add 6. X equals square root of 6 plus 6. You can go ahead and enter that in your calculator. Again, when you enter the square root of 6, make sure you close the parenthesis before you hit plus 6. Click enter. 8.4. We also have this one here. Add 6. So x equals negative root 6 plus 6. Enter that in. And I need it to be negative, so I'm going to hit the negative sign. The square root symbol can be found right above the squared. You might have to hit a second button to get to it. Make sure you close the parenthesis. And that answer is 3.6. So there's our two answers. Factor, so it's the same thing. Rewrite it with a squared. Take the square root of both sides. Make sure you have the positive and the negative version. Solve for x. Nice job today, mathematicians.